We continue today with a series on housing in several specific towns in the North Shire and how a general shortage of affordable or workforce housing is playing out in those particular towns. We began with a look at Arlington and now turn to Manchester. Housing is one of those issues that's been on many short lists of pressing problems for a long time now. Home ownership is one of the core components of the American dream, but it's one that's becoming harder to reach for many people. Interest rates and the cost of buying a home have delayed that for many. But finding rental properties isn't easy either, especially in a town like Manchester, where the pickings are few and far between. This situation has been around for a while and precedes the COVID pandemic's arrival in 2020, which gave an added jolt to the marketplace, albeit one that may be receding a bit now. Between infrastructure issues like municipal water and sewer lines, construction costs, and zoning and permitting issues, the fix is far from clear. To take a deeper dive into this, we reached out to Manchester's town manager, Scott Murphy, and the chairman of the town's planning commission, Phil Peterson, to get their insights.
So I think that it's clearly a problem because in addition to that study, local employers can't get people to work for them because they don't have a place to live. And the more units that come offline for long-term rentals and become short-term rentals or Airbnbs, rented for Airbnb short-term purposes, they take out that long-term market. And so there's less long-term rentals available for the workforce. So what happens that then people start looking at outside locations, outside of Manchester, outside the immediate area, and where they can commute a short distance. And that's what's happening right now. For example, we have an interview later today with a person who graduated recently from Penn State. We have an assistant zoning administrator position we're trying to fill. And one of his first questions was, where can I find housing? And then he had done some homework, and he was talking about Cambridge, New York, or Bennington, or even Rutland he was mentioning. So, I mean, you're looking at a half-hour to 40-minute commute to find a decent housing at an affordable rate. Yeah, I mean, I've heard different numbers from different people. I heard something last night that there was 30% less long-term housing, rental housing, than there was 5 years ago. I don't know if that number is accurate or not. I just know that people are having difficulties finding housing. We just went through that application process with the Shires. We wanted to develop an affordable housing / workforce housing mixed complex. But the location they were working with, which was town-owned property right behind the Depot Street property that the town owns, was not the best location. And they're still looking at other various spots in Manchester. And we hope to help assist them find something.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that 301 Depot Street, I guess. I take it that idea is not moribund then. It's not dead. You're still going to try and find an alternative site for something approaching the 30 or so units that were envisioned for that site? Right.
And we've been talking with cat buyers from the executive director of the Shires, and there are several other locations in Manchester that might be suitable. And so there's some ongoing discussions with developers, and so we're hoping that something will come to fruition. I think the cost of construction is still very high. Land acquisition, construction material costs. We had a local developer who was trying to build a bunch of units. He is building a bunch of units in town right here on Main Street, and he had a market price that he was shooting for. It's now escalated up beyond the upper range that he had in mind, and that's all due to the things we just talked about. So I don't think it's easy to develop workforce housing, and you need a lot of things to come together. As far as zoning goes, our planning commission just presented the select board with a bunch of zoning changes to the land use plan, and the select board is holding the first of a couple, at least, meetings on October 25th, I believe it is.
And then we turn to Phil Peterson of the Planning Commission for his takeaways. Short-term rentals, or STRs, are another issue that's come in for discussion, with the argument being heard that they take homes that might otherwise be full-time permanent residences away from those seeking to buy, and instead are used by short-term visitors. We discussed this idea with Mr. Peterson. The study can be found on the town's website at manchester-vt.gov/short-term rental impact study.
There are no Manchester-specific regulations, constraints, etc., around short-term rentals. I know that there are rules of thumb, and I think the state may have a number of days, 30 would it be, where it's fairly common to when you exceed that, you essentially are outside the realm of short-term rentals and more moving into the space of long-term leasing. But specifically in Manchester, we have no rules around short-term rentals at all.
Do you think that is a part of the sort of the matrix of issues surrounding the need for more affordable housing? If there were fewer short-term rentals, in short, would there be more affordable housing available?
Right. I think it's very difficult to say, Andrew. I think without actually, and I think any municipality or other locale would have a very difficult time definitively answering that. In part, I would look at the data, so what we have right now from this study is a look backwards a few years. And what I'll do is address your question with respect to the future in a minute. When we look backwards, we see that to reinforce what you just said about the number of short-term rentals increasing way back in 2017 to perhaps 2019, from 2018 to 2022, there was only an increase of 10 absolute units, from 177 to 187. So an increase of 10 units when the total increase in housing units was 19% in Manchester from 2015 to 2021. Just about the same number of years of measurement, perhaps one more year. That tells me that short-term rentals, even with an increase in housing in town, doesn't have a material impact on, or hasn't had a material impact on freeing up longer-term housing. And then I would look at it with respect to the future, and that is that you can't really understand how many short-term rentals might be converted into longer-term leases if, for instance, the town were to take some sort of extreme step, and this would be very extreme, and I don't anticipate anything like this occurring, of actually eliminating the ability for landlords to offer short-term rentals in their homes. There is little evidence that those short-term rentals that would no longer be allowed would be converted to longer-term leases. In fact, in Burlington, this issue has been bandied about, and there have been some regulations proposed, reviewed, possibly backed up and changed. But in any case, there were a lot of landlords that were interviewed when that offer short-term rentals as to what they might do with their property if they could no longer offer a short-term rental, and a fair percentage of those owners said they would not create long-term lease opportunities out of those for a variety of reasons.
The state legislature passed a bill this past session known as the Home Act. This act amends the Planning and Development Statute, Act 250, and other laws to enable new opportunities for housing development within the state, regional, and local planning and development regulations. It aims to discourage town sprawl. Under the legislation, municipalities must apply the same or less prohibitive dimensional standards to duplexes as they would to a single-unit dwelling. In areas served by municipal water and sewer, municipalities must allow multi-unit dwellings with 3 or 4 units to be a permitted and not just a conditional use. Meanwhile, we also recently had an extended conversation with Kat Bryars, the executive director of Shires Housing, which has built and hopes to build more affordable housing in Manchester. It recently hoped to develop a parcel of land behind 301 Depot Street in Manchester, but that plan didn't pan out. But there may be other options, she said. You can find the full interview with Kat Bryars on GNAT-TV's website at gnat-tv.org. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.